Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. We are going to do a series of episodes here over the next few weeks of dentists who have bought or started practices, ironically, both internationally based on the principles of our show, but how they've learned and grown as a leader and where they see their challenges and opportunities. We're going to start today with Dr. Scott Kollen from Vancouver, British Columbia. He's got a very enviable situation, but has also had some major adversity, COVID, within the first year of starting his practice. How he's handled all of that, what he's done well, where his opportunities for growth. I really enjoyed this interview, and I think you guys are going to too. Welcome to another episode here. I have an interview that I've been looking forward to for a while. I got an email and a message from a friend that we've met via the podcast and via our Facebook group, Dr. Scott Kollen. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Richard. Happy to be here.
Uh, you got an email from, and we'll kind of backtrack from this, but you got an email from Danica at Practice by Numbers that said you had some of the highest case acceptance numbers she'd ever seen, and that you should. Did she even suggest you coming on the show?
Yeah, she was the one that put the idea in my head. This was on her onboarding call, and she kind of did a double take at one of the numbers and was like, "I've never seen anybody with this number before. You should tell Richard and Matt and George at the podcast about this and tell them that I sent you." And so I just fired off an email to you, and here we are.
Cool. Well, so let's rewind first, and we'll round back to that case acceptance. You are a year into a startup, more or less or more. Where are you at in terms of your
Pretty
startup
much
journey?
I mean, it depends if you take the whole COVID thing into account. We opened May 21st of 2019, so just over a year old, but haven't had our doors open for quite a year yet.
Okay, so introduce yourself. Where are you from? Where are you practicing? Where'd you go to dental school? And what was the moment that you decided, like, hey, let's do a startup. I'm ready to do this thing and become a practice owner.
Which time? There's been more than
Right.
one.
Okay.
Okay. So anyways, yeah, Scott Kollen. I'm up in Canada, actually, in Vancouver, British Columbia, about 3 hours north of Seattle. I went to dental school at the University of British Columbia here in Vancouver as well, born and raised. After I finished school, I had a pretty roundabout career leading up to this point. I was an associate on Vancouver Island for a few years in a couple different private practices. From there, I made the jump across the Rocky Mountains over to Calgary, Alberta, which is Canada's version of Texas, if you want to.
Which is where I was born. So,
right.
Before you badmouth Calgary.
I'm not badmouthing it. I loved it there. So I spent a few years in Calgary, and that was kind of a big transformative part of my career. I joined as an associate in a busy group practice, and at that point they had five locations. And about a year and a half in, they approached me to discuss partnership. And they were coming up in this huge growth phase. And so I scaled down my hours at the first really busy place, and then went in on a startup clinic that they were opening, one of many. And I worked there part-time as well. And so during that kind of 3-year time span, we had gone from the 5 locations to 15 locations by the time that it was pretty crazy growth. So anyways, I ended up leaving there, I think when was that? 2018. And then there was an opportunity that came up back home here in Vancouver. And then I said, startup, let's do it again. And so then I ended up doing a startup in Vancouver, and we just opened this one about a year ago.
Okay, so this is interesting. I don't know if I've ever talked with someone who's kind of done back-to-back startups like this. So you got your reps in with someone else's funding on the first one.
With a bit of my own.
And a little bit of your own on the first one?
Yeah.
Okay. So you learned some things and you went through some painful, growth and opportunities there. And then all of a sudden you get to turn around and do it again. Was that a hard decision to walk away, and maybe you can't talk about it. We can edit this out, but sometimes it doesn't work out with partnerships, with, working with different people, and you have to kind of go out on your own, even though you're invested in in both time and financial resources.
It wasn't a very hard decision. I was getting a bit homesick, not being back here in Vancouver. Um, the girl I was dating at the time had got into a fellowship back here in Vancouver as well, so that
Mm.
had played a huge role in it. Um, so yeah, to answer your question, it wasn't that hard of a decision, and having gone through it once, everything was still pretty fresh in my head. So it was kind of easy to be like, all right, this is what I would tweak and this is what I would change. And I mean, the opportunity itself was too good to pass up, given the fact that I was going to be coming back anyways. I looked around at buying practices, but this one was definitely had the best outlook for the future.
Okay, so let's talk about your comparative startups. I didn't expect that to be part of this episode, but I didn't realize you were a serial startupper. Um, so what was different about the demographics and the size of the practice? Is this like repeat, exact same major metro type startup one versus startup two? Talk to us about the similarities and the differences between the two.
So Vancouver and Calgary are both probably if not the biggest cities in Western Canada. It just came down to where exactly in the city these locations were. The first one in Calgary was a bit more of uh, a downtown, close to downtown location, but it was an older neighborhood. It had some development going on around it. Alberta at the time had just kind of started in on this recession with oil crashing and whatnot, so that made it, excuse me, a little bit tougher. The other thing with the Calgary one, it wasn't the first one on the block. There was already another one, I think one or two dentists within maybe 5 blocks away, kind of thing. And then you compare it to the one here in Vancouver, which most people here in Canada would say Vancouver and Toronto are probably the two most saturated cities in the
Yeah.
entire country. I think I looked at the stats and it was like 1 to 784, something like that
Okay.
for a dentist to population ratio. Uh, but the spot that I landed on was a master planned community that's slated to be built out to 15,000 people by 2030, 2035, or something like that. And so at this point right now, there's probably 4,000 ish people in the area.
And when you say master plan community, are we talking like apartment complex buildings? Are we talking homes? Like what is the area?
Yeah, so it's like a super narrow strip of land east west. Um, sorry, it's long east west, but it's super narrow in terms of north south, bordered by a highway on the north side and a river on the south side. And so, uh, basically, this developer had planned this community like over a decade ago in conjunction with city council to build it out into a full use community with all the proper zoning for your grocery stores, your daycares, your schools, your parks, etc., rather than just little one-off developments. And in
Huh.
terms of the residential, it's a mixture of high-rise condos, low-rise condos, and then the commercial is ground floor in some of the buildings. So there's no single-family homes. It's a very dense community.
Yeah. No, this is amazing. So, and how did you find out about this?
A friend of a friend of a friend that I ended up playing basketball with, and it's just this weird connection from back in like 10 years ago when I was in undergrad and a day camp coworker as well.
So, do you have like non-compete in terms of other dentists coming into the commercial area?
Yeah, there's there's definitely language like that written into the lease. That's a
That's
must.
amazing. So you've got this like trajectory of new patients who are literally just gonna be moving in every single year for however long it takes for this, whole thing to come to fruition, and you're the guy, you're the dentist on the block, and, it's gonna have everything in there, and you're gonna be like their dentist. They're all gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, he's Dr. Collen, like, let's go see him."
Exactly. First to market is a good place to be.
That's amazing. Okay, cool. So you did a startup in Calgary. You did it kind of during the oil crash, and for our listeners who don't know, Alberta's economy, it kind of doesn't matter what the rest of the world is doing. Like when the '08 to you know, the '08 crash, '07, '08 crash happened, Alberta was pretty much unaffected because oil prices just buoyed the whole economy. But then when oil prices tanked later, Alberta had its own little mini crash, and it's due to, fracking and other stuff that they've got going up north. Um, so it was kind of a rough startup. What were the lessons? So, we've got a lot of people. We haven't done a lot of startup content on our podcast. We've convinced a lot of people that practice ownership is worth it and that acquisitions are the way to go because immediate cash flow, immediate patience. However, there are times where you want to live in Vancouver. There's no good practices to buy, and there's this amazing opportunity to do a startup. So there's times where it's like, no, startup is the right answer. Um, so what are the lessons you learned from your first startup that you did differently or that you carried to your second startup?
Location and demographics is huge. Being that first one to market in a growing community makes life way, way, way easier when it comes to acquiring new patients. That would be the main thing. And then the other big thing that I did with this startup that we didn't with the first one was online booking. Um, I had used LocalMed before. I've switched over to Flex now, but just having that passive ability for patients to book in. I love waking up and seeing emails in my inbox that from like 10 p.m. or 3:30 in the morning for so and so booked a new patient exam with you, and just having that ability to connect and get people in without exerting any effort.
Well, and some people who have an existing practice and they've got a busy schedule and they're having a hard time get patients in, they worry about opening up a column for these new patients that book online. Whereas in a startup, it's the exact opposite, where you're like, I don't have team members to answer the phone after hours. I Any patient who books themselves is saving me time and effort, and you're literally just trying to fill your schedule. So in a startup situation, it seems like these online booking options are almost a no-brainer.
Oh yeah, I would do it 100 times all over again, and I would probably even market it more so before I opened the gates to online booking. Like when I first turned it on, I think within the first half an hour, there's 18 people that had booked already, and I was losing my mind, freaking out. I was like, "Oh, this is actually happening now. It's all coming
This is
together."
real.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember you doing some or at least seeing photos of you doing, like, an event. Was that at this, like, big complex that you're at? They had, like, a community event, you just showed up with an iPad and online booking?
Pretty much. I saw a sign that they were having some event, and this was still probably 7 or 8 months before booking, or sorry, before opening. And so I talked to the property management company, got a hold of their marketing director, and was like, "Hey, can I get a booth?
Yeah.
I'll pay whatever you want. Just let me set up a table and a booth." And yeah, I think I got an email list of 120 names, and that was kind of the, what did I call it? The sourdough starter to get things going.
Well, and that's brilliant. Okay, so, it was before you had online booking, you did an email list, so you needed a way to get a hold of these people. You couldn't promise them an appointment slot, but now you've got a list to blast things out to as soon as you're able to. And is that what you did with the online booking? Is you send an email to that list of people and they booked on that?
I sent it to that. I started social media accounts way earlier than I did for the first startup. I talked with the marketing director for the whole development company, asked if they would be interested or willing to repost some of the stuff, and built up a pretty good Instagram following that way, at least when it comes to new patients. It's not like I have like 10,000 followers by any means, but you
Well,
don't
and
need a
the
ton
funny
to
thing
get
is all
started.
you care about is the followers in that complex and in the surrounding area that could
Exactly.
that could come to you. So who cares, 10,000 followers? If you've got 2,000 patients, that's all you need.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So what did you do? I think a lot of dentists struggle, and we haven't had our marketing season of shared practices. We're going to get there. What kind of stuff are you posting on social media that is getting you traction versus the stuff that just kind of sits there, has no engagement, that people ignore, or you feel like, was this worth it?
Honestly, anything and everything that I could behind the scenes, sharing little snippets of the floor plan, uh, how the space looked at the beginning, just kind of doing the little boomerang, dangling the keys, like, oh, I got the space now.
Nice.
Uh, Putting up, I find people really like the before and after photos where you've got the empty space and then you've got it built out with studs and then the electrical run, drywalls up, and kind of having those little stages. Um, Honestly, a lot of the main interaction that I found was when I'd have a picture of either myself or my staff in some form or another in the actual post. And I think being the one to actually write your own authentic captions is huge rather than farming
Yeah.
it out.
No, I think with social media, and it's actually why our Instagram sucks at shared practices, is because I'm not willing to just farm it out, because it's like, unless it's real, people don't really care. And
Exactly.
and eh, and the real stuff is what people care about. They care about you as a person, they care about what you care about, and they care about the things that get you excited. And if you're gonna show up on a platform, you show up as yourself. Um, that's the behind the scenes. That's the thing you get with social media that you don't get just coming into the dental office. So you've absolutely kind of managed it all yourself the whole time.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
I mean, I
cool.
ask my team for suggestions on stuff to post or if they've got ideas or other photos that they want to share, but by and large, it's been me.
Yeah, well, and that's huge because social media is part of your marketing strategy, but it's not like a paid part of your marketing strategy that you're outsourcing or getting photos and reposting things. Um, what else have you done marketing that has or hasn't worked for you?
Let's see what has worked. Mailers have worked. I mean, when you put it in the context of getting like two new patients out of a 10,000 mailer mail out, it doesn't sound great. But if you look at the production of it, and I think that's the key is being able to track and look back at how much you're producing from these patients that come in. Those two
Mhm.
patients actually produced, I think, three times what I spent on the marketing um, or on the fee for the mailers. What else? Facebook and Instagram have honestly been huge. Google reviews comes up a lot. Thanks for the plug for Swell. Whenever you guys started talking about them, because they've been lights out in terms of boosting our reviews. Um,
A little sneak peek here, Swell is about to unroll some pretty awesome features, that I had a call with them just a few hours ago.
ooh,
Yeah, so the more goodies coming your way, more good news from Swell. So I'm glad you
awesome.
like them and that they've been knocking it out of the park for you.
Yeah, they've been awesome. As far as other marketing stuff goes, just having the biggest sign that we can.
Nice.
We're posted up right across from a bus stop. Uh, I haven't done any like magazine mailouts or any huge Google ad campaigns. Honestly, it's been a lot of grassroots community type stuff. Either having booths set up at other events or talking with the marketing director, for, like I said, for the development company and getting them to help plug some of our stuff.
Um, Talk to us about events. I feel like one of the events is sometimes one of those things where you're like, "Is it worth it for me to, like, pay for this event and stand there?" What has been have all of your events been productive, or have there been events that were totally duds?
There was, I think, one that was a dud mostly because it rained in the middle of the
Okay,
summertime. But
sure.
other than that, they've actually been pretty good. Um, I ended up getting a local, what do you call it, maker lab, one of those kind of tinkerer type labs,
Yeah.
and I got them to make one of those spinny wheel things with the loud like
Oh, cool.
like
Yeah,
Wheel of
yeah, yeah.
Fortune, that
Wheel
kind
of
of thing.
Fortune, yeah.
Having that clicking sound, it's like crack for kids that are just like automatically attracted to it, and then they want to go line up, and they're like, "Mommy, can you go with me?" And then it gives us the opportunity to kind of chat with the parents. We'd have iPads set up, and I would just hotspot them to my phone and be able to do online booking on the spot.
Okay, cool. What did you give away with your little clacking spinner?
Oh, what do we do? We had I've got a bunch of like temporary tattoos, stickers. We had balloons. What else did we have? I hired a face painter
Oh,
That
nice.
one's good for creating long lines. If you want to have bored parents and kids
Yep.
sitting in a line ready to be talked to, then get a face painter.
That's hilarious. Well, and the face painter, like, I've been the parent standing in the line for a face painter, and it's like the kids will go have fun while it's like, "Okay, hon, bring the kids back when we're like, 3rd from the front," and you end up sitting there for a long, long time. So if you've got this captive audience, like, it's some great FaceTime with these parents, whether they want it or not.
Oh, exactly. And I got people coming in now being like, "Oh yeah, remember when we talked earlier?" And I'm like, "What? That was like a year and a half ago for like 2 minutes, but cool."
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so ton of grassroots, stuff on your own. You did some mailers. You're tracking all this. Website. Who did your website? Do you remember?
Again, friend of a friend. I think he just launched his own kind of health science website, business marketing thing for Canadian medical and dental professionals. But I was in close contact with him, and I wrote all the copy for the website too.
Okay, so a lot of this is coming from you. This isn't stuff that you're just like, hey, do this. Um, is that like writing stresses me out, and I know that about myself. Was that easy for you, or did that take a while to write all the copy for your website?
I found it pretty easy. I think I honed a lot of it just through practice for writing Instagram ads.
Sure.
And actually, I had already written part of it, like the descriptions of services and stuff. I had written those for the first startup clinic, so I was able to just kind of tweak a few things here and there and recycle that stuff. I also had a decent amount of free time during the whole pre-opening
Yep.
part. I was flying back and forth between here and Calgary because I was working there 2 days a week, and then I'd come back here and then fly out
Okay.
there every week. So yeah.
Well, and it might sound to our listeners that this was nothing but a grand slam from you. You did have some adversity in there, COVID aside. Uh, Share with us what happened with your foot.
So yeah, adversity. That was that's a very good description of it. Uh, so this was in January. We were supposed to open in May,
January of
and
19.
January 19, we were supposed to open. Actually, we were supposed to open, I think, April, but that got pushed back. Anyways, I'm back in Vancouver, back to get to seeing all my friends and family, get to reconnect with all the guys that I used to play basketball with. And we've got a really solid team together. Everybody's doing great. We just won the championship December 2019. First game back December 2018. First game back January 2019. Um, I'm on the court 20 seconds in and just pop. And I just hit the floor like a ton of bricks. And I look around, I turned around behind me to see who had kicked me in the back of the leg so maliciously. And there was nobody there. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, that was my Achilles. And I reached
Oh,
down and you do the whole thing, running your finger down the bottom of your calf. There's a bit of a hole there. And
oh,
yeah, zero pain. Zero
what?
pain. Yeah, it didn't hurt at all, and it didn't hurt for like a
So
week. I was in a cast for a week.
your Achilles just like detached on
Yeah,
its own
yeah.
and no pain.
If anybody has ever seen that slow motion replay of when Kevin Durant ruptured his Achilles in the NBA Finals last year against the Raptors, it was pretty much the exact same play, except I didn't have the ball and I'm not Kevin Durant. But
Right, right.
yeah, just a loud pop and went down like a ton of bricks. And so that was January. Luckily, a bunch of the guys on my team are physiotherapists. One of them had just opened a clinic in conjunction with an orthopedic surgeon, so I was able to get
Oh
a
my goodness.
consult pretty quick, get the diagnosis.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but seriously, your teammates are just like, "Oh, bro, I got you. Don't
Oh,
worry. We're gonna take care of this."
100%. I had two of them making some like heel lift thing that I could put my foot in. The other one's on his phone remoting into the into the office software to check his online bookings. Like, there's a consult available at 8 a.m. tomorrow.
Man,
Um,
if you're gonna play basketball, some aggressive ball with friends, make sure that they can all,
take care of you.
take care of you and put you back together afterwards.
Exactly, exactly. So, anyways, I end up back at home, and I was doing a locum at the time in a nearby community for a guy that was on medical leave for a hip replacement.
Oh,
And
no.
so then I got to call the owner and be like, hey, so your regular 65-year-old dentist is out right now with a hip, and I'm out right now with an Achilles, actually. So I ended up having to have the surgery done, but there was apparently there was some legal case where even though it was somebody's left Achilles that had been ruptured, they still weren't allowed to drive because you got to wear this huge boot, and it presents issues with like room for the brake. And anyways, bottom line was I wasn't allowed to drive
Oh,
for I think it was 6 or 8 weeks. And Vancouver, being Vancouver in all of its NIMBY glory, I think was the last city in North America of over 1 million people that did not have Lyft and did not have Uber.
oh,
So here I am, not able to drive, and no easy way of getting around because there's definitely not enough cabs here for everybody. So that was fun. Um,
wow.
yeah, there was a lot of bumming rides off people and spending time at home in this office trying to get stuff done remotely.
Dang. Well, at that point, you're like, "Maybe I should just get a unit in the same, complex as my
Yeah,
practice."
seriously. I was on a little scooter, like one of those knee scooters going around, and yeah, I ended up meeting a guy at the Starbucks across the street actually that was on crutches, and he was wearing the same kind of air cast. I was like, Achilles? And he's like, Achilles. And then he became one of my new patients like the first month that we opened.
Oh, no way, that's hilarious. Your eyes lock across the Starbucks.
Yeah,
That
it was pretty funny. But
that's
anyways, so
hilarious.
yeah, that was a fun lead up to opening.
Man, okay, so it seemed like it, might be a little rocky. When did you know when did the, like, startup fear and panic turn into, "This is gonna be alright, I'm on a really good trajectory"? How long it for you, it sounds like you had enough patient pressure build up that I imagine that moment was pretty early on.
Yeah, I think it was month 2 of last year, we hit 70 new patients or something like that.
Okay.
I think I hired my first hygienist 3 weeks in,
Holy
something
cow.
like that. Yeah,
Okay, so
it came up
you're
pretty quick.
you're
I was
not
like, "This will be
one
okay."
of the startup hygienist, guys that's like, "No, I'm gonna do hygiene for years here." You brought that hygienist on pretty early.
Oh, yeah, that definitely needed to be done, and I'm very grateful that it ended up like that rather than the other way around.
Nice. So where are you at now in terms of team? How big is your team?
Oh, man, I think we might have hit double digits. I just hired
Really?
another assistant. Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are part time. I've got two full time assistants, one part time one. I've got a full time hygienist and a part time hygienist. I've got a full time receptionist, and then two part time kind of treatment coordinator, recall coordinators. So what is that? Nine,
Wow.
almost double digits.
And total patients now at this point, on the books.
I
Do you
think
know
it's about
roughly?
somewhere like 650, something like
Okay,
that for, I guess, 10 and a half, 11 months.
okay. And COVID happened in there, so there's
Yeah.
there's some fun. So overall recommendations, having done 2 startups, it seems like, you know what? If the opportunity is right, startup is not that much slower than an acquisition in terms of, cash flow and, you still have the whole startup process, you still have the patient growth, but you're well on your way and you've got a pretty awesome trajectory.
And especially given I guess, the practice sales climate here in Vancouver, where not a lot of decent practices were coming on the market, and having just come from this startup culture in the group clinic in Calgary that was awesome. Like I ended up leaving with them on very good terms and still talk with a lot of those guys
Oh,
and
cool.
girls today. But what I learned from there, it was still so fresh that it was a no brainer to be like, all right, this is replicable. Let's do it.
Cool. That's amazing. Well, so I wanted to cover that, your story and your lessons from a startup perspective. Now let's get to this case acceptance thing. What do you think this is? You have our case acceptance course that we did a year ago. I want to blame it all on that, but I have a feeling that you're doing more than, just some of the things you saw in there, and a lot of this is what you're bringing to the table. So talk to us about how you've set up case acceptance and in your practice from a team perspective and from your perspective and what's working for you.
So as far as the hygiene, I'll start with hygiene because that one's easy. I hired a brand new grad. Actually, I started off with three new brand new grads.
Oh,
um,
wow.
yeah, but that's another story. But anyways, my first full time hygienist was a new grad, and just during the whole training process and laying out the expectations, not only for her but for everybody, really, was that the one thing that nobody should be leaving the clinic without is not an extra toothbrush, and it's not a little baggie of floss. It's they shouldn't be leaving without a new appointment. And as long as they booked a new appointment, that automatically checks things off in the what is it, the patient acceptance dashboard of PBN. And so having that expectation laid out clearly from the start was really good, especially in terms of the hygiene department. As for me, like coming back and seeing all these new patients, uh, I could talk about all the things that I guess Breakaway talks about in terms of having the TVs up. But I think the new patient protocol, I guess, or exam routine process that I go through, I don't end up seeing new patients in hygiene. They've got an hour with me on their own.
Mm.
And in that, there's a meet and greet in the consult room, an office tour that is no longer on the menu thanks to COVID. Uh, After that, I mean, I'm sitting down with my assistant. We're doing intraoral photos, just little mouthwatch camera for any teeth that have anything slightly suspect going on. From there, we're doing our X-rays, cone beam if we need to, and full SLR photos, retracted mirrors, etc. And then
You're not messing around. That's
no. And so, like, my usual spiel, the new patient will be sitting in the consult room. I'll go in. They've already filled out their medical and dental history forms. And those dental history forms already have kind of leading questions like, is there anything in your smile that you don't like? Or have you ever had problems with food getting stuck or whatever? But it makes it very easy to bring up treatment options if they've already checked off a box that says yes. And
here's one of my problems or concerns. Talk to me about this. Yeah.
so in that console room, I've already got clear aligner models. I've got some BioClear marketing stuff. And so I can just already have these kind of leading conversations, planting the seed in this kind of 5 minute window where I'm just talking to them face to face, non clinical environment. And then right before that conversation ends, I'll kind of describe the process. If we're going to do oral cancer screening, check your jaw joint, measure your bite, measure your gums, check for any cavities, update photos, update x-rays. And once we got all that information, we're going to put it up on the TV, sit down, go through it together. And from there, my job is to let you know, A, what's going on, B, what your options are, C's, pros and cons of each. And from there, you get to pick and choose what you want to do. Sound good? And then from there, then we get up and go. I think I got that verbiage from Prime Speak. I don't know if you've heard of that program. There's a guy.
No, we're tell us about it.
Do I have the book with me here? No, I don't. This was it's strictly a new patient exam communications course that the group in Calgary had brought in. I think the guy that started it was from Australia, and that was one of the first non-clinical CE courses I'd attended, and it stuck with me for years. And they talk about all these little acronyms and how to talk about the the damaging result of their existing condition, and just talking about
Mm.
what can happen. So, anyways, once I've got all these photos up, and they're 55-inch TV right in front of them, and it
Yeah.
makes it easy to point stuff out. There's no wishy-washiness about there is a black spot on your upper molar, etc. And from there, it it flowed pretty easily. And doing work on staff too, that's another big one. when the team members can talk about their experiences getting certain procedures done, and I can just get up and leave the room.
Right.
That is huge.
Well, see, now I'm curious on your SLR photos. How many photos do you take, and which ones do you take?
So we do upper arch with a mirror, lower arch with a mirror, and then I think there's one, two, three. There's probably about eight, roughly,
Okay.
something like
You're
that.
once again not messing around.
Oh, I get
Uh,
my assistant to do that part.
well, and you absolutely can. So, of this hour doctor time that's booked off, how much time are you actually in these exam rooms? Like, when are you booking those, and how well do they stack with the other appointments?
I think if you were to look at provider time, it's probably something to the tune of 20 minutes with the doctor and then 10 minutes roughly with the assistant. And during that time, I'll go either get somebody numb or it's a good time to go to hygiene check.
Okay.
And then sometimes it'll be up to half an hour of just me going over stuff with them and talking about options.
Are you looking for like, what's your ideal case mix? Like, if you could do nothing but, Invisalign and, like, what are the procedures that you enjoy the most and that, you really are aiming for with these patients?
Um, Number one would, well, actually, it's kind of a mixture of two. Being able to do clear liners and then some BioClear makeovers afterwards. I find that to be fairly therapeutic. And I mean, the development I'm in is a fairly younger demographic, so there's not as
Yeah.
many missing teeth as I would like, but there is a much higher demand for recorrecting my bite because I didn't wear my retainer and fixing up these little dark spots between my teeth. So, yeah, that BioClear clear liner mix is good. Not that I don't like implants. I just wish there were more.
There's not enough missing teeth. No, I have actually a
Mhm.
friend, who was, one of my partners in dental school. They partner us up at Midwestern University, so when I was a 3rd year, he was a 4th year. Omar Virani is his name, and, he moved to Vancouver, and,
That name
he
sounds very familiar.
he's a great guy. If you ever meet him, say hi
I
from
think I
Richard.
drove by his clinic yesterday. Not even lying. It's in North Vancouver, I'm pretty sure.
Well, and it's in a very, like, a nice metro area, and
Yep.
he said that he has very young patients who don't need a lot of, there's not a lot of gross decay, missing teeth type stuff. It's very elective, aesthetic
Mhm.
oriented, and there's only so much you can do if there's not, a bunch of complex restorative needs. Then you're like, "Okay, here's your aesthetic options, and here's how we can take you from a 7 to a 10," but, uh, it's a different demographic.
Exactly. And not to say that I don't have that kind of older patient crowd, but vast majority are kind of under 40.
Well, and, for you, I mean, one of the things that can set your practice up to be is if you've got a relatively healthy patient base, you could have more hygienists, um, to doctor ratio where it's like mostly young, healthy people who need, their routine work, but, that can also be a really good thing. Some people are annoyed by that because 'cause they're like, "Oh, man, there's just not enough dentistry for me to be doing around here after you've done some of this work." But at the same time, it's like, "Well, no, you can just have 3 columns of hygiene going strong, and, as long as you can keep up on the checks, you're good to go."
Exactly. And that was one of the big takeaways I got from working in Calgary. That was an 8-op clinic. And on some Saturdays when I was there, I'd be working my column, checking 4 hygiene columns.
Ooh,
Usually it was kind of 3 recalls out of those 4 at a time in an hour. And then there was
yeah.
another overflow column for kids or emergencies. So being able to have the capacity of seeing a lot of hygiene patients, and it's like a subscription service,
Yeah,
for lack of a better term, that you can build your business off of.
absolutely. No, that's awesome. Okay, cool. So there is a lot that goes into it. It's like it's not an accidental thing that you have this amazing case acceptance. You've got a very defined process and you are taking your time, you're taking your team's time to make sure that patients understand what you see, what you're diagnosing and why, what their options are in a very non-confrontational, like hey, here's your teeth on the big screen. This is what I see. This is what we can do about it. What do you want to do about it? Is there any other like nuggets or gems that you want to pass along in terms of case acceptance there?
That Primaspeak course was great. The DDS GP iPad app, I don't know if you've heard of that.
Tell us about that.
So it's just got a bunch of different clinical scenarios that you can drag a slider and it'll show the progression of interproximal decay, but it's not narrated. It doesn't have any text, and you can pause and draw. You can take photos and add that into each little category. So you can take a photo of your crown prep and be able to show a patient this is what your crown is. But all the explanation part is totally up to you. That app has been good, and being able to tie back into what patients bring up in that initial consult visit, where, oh, Rick, I know you checked off this box, and now we've got the opportunity to talk about it. What don't you like about so and so, and really just putting it back on the patient that, hey, you were the one that mentioned this and brought it up. I'm just here to give you more information on it. What do you want to know?
Nice. No, that's huge. I love your process, and if anyone is interested in kind of setting this up where you've got that new patient experience that's different than just come in for a cleaning and, "Oh, yeah, we'll look at your teeth." Rewind and listen to that. I think that's a great blueprint that anyone can implement, especially, doing a startup, building reputation, finding the work, and taking care of a young, healthy patient base like yours. So, um, well, the last piece here was we're in a season on leadership, culture, and change. So I apologize to everyone that we took some detours there, but I wanted to have this conversation. I feel like a startup is. I heard something on another podcast. This is a non-dental podcast. This is a guy who started a company, software as a service company. Originally he's doing programming, and then hiring a few small people to work with him, and then it starts growing and there's customer support. All of a sudden, a few years later, he's the head of this organization of 60 people, and he's no longer doing the same things that he was doing before. I feel like a dental startup is a little bit of a microcosm of that as well, where in the beginning you're managing projects and details and blueprints and contractors and making a lot of decisions, and then all of a sudden you have to shift gears to be this marketer, clinician, onboarding, training, and then all of a sudden you've got this practice that's up and running, and now you've got a team of almost 10 people. How has doing these 2 startups caused you to grow as a person and as a leader? Because that's one of the challenging things about any endeavor like that, where it is growing, is that at each point in time, you have to learn a different set of skills, and some things might be easy for you, and some things might be hard for you. So, that was a really long compound question. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to rewind and see where the actual question mark
What
fell in
was the
there.
question? Yeah.
Anyways, leadership, culture. Well, I mean, it starts. It started in my associateship really when some of the partners were like, "Do you want to ever be an owner in your life?" And my answer was yes. And from there, they kind of started nurturing that mindset, in terms of taking a bit more of a lead and helping delegate and direct team members to certain tasks. Um, it really came to a came to a boil during the whole negotiation and build out process, where, like you said, I'm managing all the different trades and trying to do site visits without an Uber and what have you. Um, and then once our doors, actually before the doors opened, the hiring process was big. I made a mistake in hiring a way too experienced office manager, ex-office manager. I was hiring her as a receptionist. Um, I think we kept her on for like a week and a half, and then I had to let her go. And then that's when I was like, you know what, we're going to start with a really good culture and 3 new grads right off the bat: assistant, reception, and hygienist, and let's go. Uh, but having, again, that clearly defined blueprint of your core values. Like, I've got these core values painted in like 8-inch tall letters all in the consult room and all around in the staff room, kind of up around the wall. So either patients in the consult room or staff in the lunchroom, kind of constantly reminded by those values.
Hmm.
And honestly, that's just kind of the bedrock of everything that we do in the clinic. And if something isn't working, then I can refer back to that and be like, Sally, remember when we talked about this? And this is on the contract that you signed when we first hired you on. Um, so that part has been huge.
So
And
your
go ahead.
core values are in your contract?
Yep. And they were on the website before I even opened the doors. So, uh, yeah, teamwork, respect, excellence, volunteerism, and innovation and implementation.
Hmm.
So Trevi. And yeah, it makes it very easy to weed things out, whether they align with those or not.
And it sounds like this person who you had to make a decision to let go very early on was probably bringing a lot of like, well, at my old office, or this is how I think it should be done. Was there any? I mean, that had to be scary. That early on, realizing, oh crap, I've made the wrong hire. Was there any panic to that?
There was, but it was so fresh that, and I still had a bit of a runway before opening, that there hadn't been any true damage inflicted
Oh, nice.
by that point, if you will. So, yeah, being able to make that decision quick and pivot and move on to the next hire who has turned out great. Um, that was pretty key.
So I love it. I think that's one of the true advantages of a startup as well is the ability to grow your own culture the way that you want it from the beginning. And in an acquisition, it's a different thing. It's you're coming into a culture, the fit with the previous owner needs to be there so that you gel with the team, and you gradually introduce some change if you're going to change things like that. Um, Whereas with a startup, you're setting the standard, you're creating what you want, and you're allowing by what you tolerate or don't tolerate uh, a culture to grow.
And then it
Um,
just multiplies. Like, honestly, Richard, that's been huge, is having that core group to start. And then as we add people, that core group of team members is kind of filtering through who else is coming in to, let's say, work as a temp for a couple days or in a working interview. And then they get to take part in who else is added onto the team. The way I like to describe it, I don't know if you remember the Under Armour campaign, it was protect this house.
yeah.
And that's I had mentioned that to the team before, and it's helped quite a bit in terms of keeping the ship afloat and steady and calm.
Well, so it sounds like you've got them doing a lot of the culture, everyone on the same page, policing, as you might say, rather than you having to, because you can't be everywhere at once. With that many team members, eventually stuff's going to happen that you don't know about.
Mhm.
And if those team members are upholding what you've built, then it's a self-replicating culture at that point.
Yeah, I totally agree. The other nice thing is if you get your culture set early, people, well, well qualified people will be more apt to seek you out. Like my treatment coordinator left her previous position to come work here, and she brought with her this whole receptionist training program that she
Mm.
runs for all of Western Canada.
Oh my
And
goodness.
like I didn't know her before that, but I laid out all these core values onto our website, and I think there's even some line of copy on there that if you think you would fit well with this type of work environment, then you should email us.
Nice. Okay, cool. So you've had some organic growth from just attracting the right people by putting that out there. Um, have you feel has there been any leadership challenges or personal growth challenges as you've grown your team? What's been hard about leading an office other than COVID? But
Oh man,
leading a team as you're getting bigger and bigger versus at the beginning when it's you and three people.
two things right off the bat. Uh, Ease of communication and then lack of time. So for the ease of communication, the more people you add, especially when they're part-time, it's harder to make sure everybody is on the same page.
Hmm.
And if I've
You make a
explained,
decision on a day that they're not there, and all of a sudden they hear about it a week later, and they're like, "Well, what the heck? Why didn't anyone tell me this?" And they're like, "Oh, we
or
changed at the meeting last week, but you weren't there."
yeah, even worse if they don't hear about it and just keep doing doing their tasks as they were before. Um, so yeah, easy communication has been hard. Having a WhatsApp group for everybody is good for those kind of quick changes that everybody can get easily. What was the second thing that I said? Oh, lack of time.
Hmm.
Um, like when you first open your doors, you've got open time. You're booking an extra 2 or 3 units per patient just to kind of take it slow. And especially me having hired 3 new grads, I knew I had to pump the brakes right off the bat to try and get everybody coordinated on the same page. Now, the assistant that I have right now, who's my lead assistant, she's one of the best ones that I've ever worked with. But as we brought on more assistants, I don't have the time to train them up to the same caliber as I did with my first assistant. And so now I'm trying to delegate that task to her to
Yeah.
have that trickle down effect, um, because it's not feasible at this point when there's way less available chair time,
Yep.
uh, to get patients in and to be able to train them. And then you add in having a respirator and face shield and trying to talk to somebody and explain things, and it's not
The
pretty.
communication barrier is real, especially then you add in, like, the plexiglass and, it's
Oh
like
man,
you just
yeah.
can't, like, hear people, they can't hear you, and,
Add in an isolite running all the time, and then like
oh
an
my
air
goodness.
purifier in the corner, and
I'm over it. Yeah,
yeah,
there's so much noise right now.
yeah.
Ugh. Well, this has been great. I gained a lot. You've made us all very jealous of your startup, um, and we're excited for you that, I guess you never finished your Achilles story, like, how do they even fix that?
Oh, so I went in under GA, got intubated, and yeah, woke up with my foot in a cast and a whole bunch of stitches. And actually, first thing I checked when I came up to in recovery was my incisors. I was like, did they chip them when they were intubating me?
You should just, like,
All of the
wear, like, a night guard into the intubation, like, "I
seriously,
don't trust you guys."
seriously. So yeah, it was just surgery and a whole lot of physio and needling.
Holy cow. Well, hopefully, COVID turns into the same thing that, in a year you can look back at your Achilles and then COVID, and every year you've got some major disaster in the spring of every year to point to and say, "Ha ha, we're glad that's over." So,
There you go. Exactly.
well, cool. Scott, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it too, Richard. I thank you for the opportunity to come on here and share,
Cool.
and
Hey,
for what you guys have done. If I can just take 1 second, your guys' podcast has been so instrumental in the last like 5 years of my career. When did you guys start?
2016, like August 2016-ish.
Okay, so the last 4 years of my career. But yeah, I was kind of skeptical at first of these guys in dental school starting a podcast, but I think you guys are at the top of my Spotify list for podcasts that I listen to, and the content that you've been able to curate and put out multiple times a week now is has just been priceless.
Thank you. That means a lot to us, and, you were right to be skeptical early on of like, "Okay, these guys haven't even bought a practice yet, let's see where this goes," but, hopefully we can keep it up, and, it's been amazing to see what people like we didn't even really give you that much great startup content, and yet you went out and crushed it, so, so anyways, we totally appreciate the feedback, so well, cool. Well, thanks, man. I'm gonna go get some sleep. I'm in the East Coast, you're out in, Pacific, but, it was good talking to you.
Likewise, you take care.
Take care. Okay, welcome back. I really didn't expect Scott to have such a in-depth process for his new patients. And, um, with an insurance-based practice versus a fee-for-service-based practice versus a high-end practice or like a healthy patient with a lot of aesthetic needs, you have to dial in what that first new patient appointment looks like. And I loved that this is just what they do, and they've got it set up, and are obviously getting great results on their case acceptance and patients who are moving forward with treatment. I also, loved that, he had some adversity, even though, the demographic was a slam dunk, and also, you know what, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Sometimes you have to do a startup and then pivot and realize, I this isn't right for me. This situation isn't where I wanna be, and to be able to walk away when the opportunity is not right is, I think, one of the most admirable things that Scott did in this episode, or talked about in this episode, was that willingness to say, "Hey, even though I've invested a lot of time, effort, and energy, the opportunity is great right here in Alberta and Calgary. I'm willing to walk away on good terms with my partners and move forward and take advantage of another opportunity." Some people feel too much like, "Oh, I'm sunk cost fallacy of like, I've already invested so much of my life in this phase or in this opportunity. I don't want to go start over again." But as you can see, you can go very quickly from uh, zero to what you want and building the practice that you want. So don't be afraid to make those hard calls and pivot when needed. I think George and I, and other people on shared practices, that's a common thing, is that if you're not happy, you're not building what you want, having the willingness to pivot, even if the pivot's hard, is key to long-term success and happiness. So, I really enjoyed this. Reach out to Scott if you enjoyed this. He's on Facebook. He's active on the Making of Dental Startup page as well as our page. And we will talk with you next time.